Okay. The next thing that I might want to do at this stage is perhaps I wanted to graph this equation. Okay, so this equation here, our 60n plus 680 equals E, I might want to graph that equation. The way I can do that is I press my home button and I'm going to use the graphing application. It's going to open my graph. I type my equation in here. The f of x is like your y, or in this case, your E. Now we need to use x and y inside our graphing application, so it's something you need to keep track of. Okay, so in this case, my E, I'm going to make that y, and the n, I'm going to make that x. I'm doing that because I want it to be in the form y equals something. So in this case, y or E equals 60n. I'm going to write 60x to match up with my x-axis here, 60x plus 680. Oops. 60x plus 680. I press enter and it looks like nothing happened. Okay, it's because our zoom is not correct, or the window is not correct. So I can press menu, window, zoom. To start with, it's good to start with zoom fit. And now we can see what my graph looks like. I can change this window further because we're working with number of cars here and we're working with earnings here. I don't really want my number of cars to go negative. So I'm going to change what my axes are here. So we say menu, window zoom, window settings, and then I get the option to decide how far I want my axis to go and what I want the scale to be. So I want my X minimum to be 0 because I don't want to go less than 0 cars. I'm going to make my maximum go all the way up to 100. I'm going to leave the scale as auto, and we might leave the Y for now as well. We'll come back to that later. So I say OK. Horrid. Okay, because our Y-axis is wrong. So I can press menu. If I do this again, and then I get something that looks a lot better. So I'm using a combination of zoom fit and window settings to get my graph looking the way that I want it to look. So I've used two things here. I graphed it. First, I couldn't see anything. So I started by using zoom fit. Then I used window settings to make any particular changes based on the question. So in this case, because my x-axis was representing the number of cars sold, I wanted to start at 0. I didn't want to go back into negative cars. So I changed that, and then the graph still looked wrong because my y-axis wasn't going up high enough. So I pressed zoom fit for a second time. Generally, using a combination of these two functions, zoom fit and window settings, will get you a graph that you need, but you can play with the rest of the settings in your own time. So once I get here, I can also create, get our table of values to appear. So if I press Control T, I get a matching table of values here. So for different values of X, I can see what Y is. So different number of cars, I can see the total earnings. I can also, to get out of that, I press it again, Control T. I can also use this function, trace, graph trace, and I can move right and left along my graph to find out things such as my axis intercepts. So when it comes up with the y-intercept, if I press enter, it's going to give me paste on the y-intercept there. So that means when I haven't sold any cars, I've already made $680. So what I've done is I have entered a graph using this add graphs. I've entered a graph here. Once it appeared, I changed the view of the screen using two different functions. I used zoom fit and I used window settings. So zoom fit just lets the calculator decide a reasonable zoom. And then window settings is where you can change what each of your axes is going up to, depending on the question and what you want to be able to see. Sometimes it's useful to get a table of values, and you do that by pressing Control T.